That's how God works. Play my position, what is given with no concerns. Go, 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 go. Set it out. Top of the morning, I'm gonna set it out.
In the book, I talk about giraffes and turtles.
Yeah.
They occupy the same space, but they don't have the same worldview. Mm-hmm. The giraffe can be in the same geographical location as the turtle, but the giraffe eats from the tops of the trees, and the turtle moves through the grass. And what ultimately happens in the lives of all people is that we eat on the level of our vision. We eat on the level of our vision.
I just have to hold that one for a moment. Hello. We eat on the level of our vision.
Yeah. When you are a giraffe,
that was good,
and you get criticism from turtles, the turtles are reporting the view from the level they're on.
Oh, that is so good.
It's a good book. No, and if you understand this, you won't be moved by what they say. And sometimes it's not even that what they say isn't true, because they know certain things about your behavior in the past, and they have defined you by who you were, but they don't understand necessarily who you are. And their poor understanding of who you are will incarcerate you to who you were. The reason I use the giraffe as a metaphor is because the giraffe has a 25-pound heart, so that it will pump blood up its 9-foot neck so that its head can stay high. Conversely, if the giraffe lowers his head to the level of the turtle, he will lose his consciousness and pass out. And when you were built to be tall,
when you were built to be tall,
you will endanger your position if you lower your perspective.
Somebody tweet that right now.
What it do, y'all? We are here live at the Creative Con Sacramento. I have some incredible guests. My name is Andru Defeye, aka the Gorilla Poet Laureate, aka the Hoodie God, aka Spin Quarantino, aka I wear my sunglasses at night, indoors, whenever, all the time, because my eyes are sensitive as my heart is, y'all. And I got Miss Marianna in here.
Hey.
I got And Yes in here.
Hello.
I got Omonivie Okhade in here.
How's it going?
And we are going to talk self-care for creatives. The Great Joy Hunt, we talk a lot of just self-care in general, mental, spiritual, emotional health, vibrational maintenance, I like to call it. And we want to get into it specifically for creatives. Y'all are some of my favorite creatives in the city of Sacramento. Without going too deep into any backstory or anything, I just want to get real into the meat and potatoes of like advice for creatives. What are your 24 karat gold pieces of advice that you've learned throughout the years? And we can just kind of we'll go like clockwise. I can't tell because everything's backwards to me. I'm gonna go to Marianna first. And then we'll go David, and then Omonivie. So, what are your solid gold pieces of advice for self-care for creatives specifically?
Well, I'm gonna just share what I do, because I think oftentimes it's really easy to tell everybody else what they need to do, and then hope it works, and be backed into the corner if we're not doing the shit ourselves. So,
that's not how you own your shit.
Yeah, it's, being that I kind of do the own your shit thing, I've had to learn it instead of just tell everybody and preach and teach, and just share what I'm doing effectively. That tends to help. So for me, one of the things is I keep a very tight schedule. And I think sometimes when we talk about self-care, we kind of go into this, just be free and do whatever, however, and just explore, which is a part of it. But for me, I found that one of the key elements for me to actually feel peace and highly cared for is this mantra that I have been using very much so the last year is non-negotiable discipline and self-care. And that discipline part is usually the part people don't want to deal with because they just want to explore and do whatever you feel in the moment. And that has its place. But I think lack of discipline is oftentimes what disturbs the peace. And sometimes when we think of discipline, we think of it from these authoritarian figures in our life, which those disciplines haven't been well, but the personal discipline. So one of the number ones I do is keeping a very tight time schedule. I wake up at about 5 a.m. I eat and hydrate and pray and meditate and do all that good stuff and talk to myself. By 6 a.m., I'm working out 6 to 7. That gets the blood pumping. That shakes off a lot of the tension and the negative energy that might be residual from last night. Then as soon as I get home from that at 8, I eat. I try to eat 3 to 4 times a day instead of waiting to not eat and then waiting until I'm starving and then maybe not making healthy food choices. I make sure to have my refrigerator stacked with pre-chop this and pre-chop that, so I don't have time to do it, because if I take that hour on a Sunday to prep the food, it's already ready and all I got to do is grab some rice, grab some beans, grab some carrots, whatever, and throw it in and go. And then after that, I'm checking my emails, responding to calls for business. And then after that, I eat again around 11:30. After that, I'm doing creative time. So that's editing, that's, mastering any of the projects that I'm on. I eat again. And then I do a small workout at home to shake off whatever stress I get from doing mental health work with people all day. And then I'd have some downtime, whether that's sharing time with friends, talking on the phone. So I do get to kick it, but it's on a time schedule and it doesn't, overlap with what my priority is. I do my work before I have my fun, and then I eat again. And then by that time, I'm grooming myself. I'm watching a good documentary. I'm, shutting it down, taking whatever extra vitamins I didn't take throughout the day. And then I have a bedtime ritual, which when I take a shower, I make sure to scrub my body and exfoliate from head to toe. I drop some aromatherapy in the shower, whether that's to invigorate or to relax. And then I put my ocean sounds on, spray my sheets down with lavender. And then that's how I make sure to put myself to bed and try to get at least no less than 6 to 7 hours of sleep. So it sounds boring and teased about it, but actually having that and sticking to that schedule at least 5 to 6 days out of the week, honestly, it allows me the ability to show up 100% for my art and for the community members I serve.
Dope. What about you, David?
Bubble wrap. No. So for me, it's really as someone who has major depression and anxiety and PTSD, and I'm going through grief right now. My father passed about a month ago, and I've dealt with grief a lot through my life. Like I hear the list of what someone like Marianna does, and it's just like, holy shit, that's mind blowing to me. Like how you can actually structure all of that. And it's healthy. It's good. Like, not talking down about that at all. For me, it's a lot of being patient with yourself, but being focused, taking that idea of the schedule and working it with my depression. So there are days where I'm not going to feel up to having all of that done. And that's okay. Accepting that, going for it, that's the goal. But for me personally, I've noticed that in helping others, the best thing I could do for them is to teach them how to observe themselves and what their needs are. And if you're feeling like crap, like what's feeding into that feeling of negativity or that self, and really being able to dive in with your art, with just self-analysis, with meditation, to see like what's going on in your head. Where's your head at? Like, that's something I've had to learn with major depression for the longest time, is that I've had to learn how to tap in with myself and understand where I'm at any given moment. And that's been the healthiest thing that I do personally.
And what does that look like for you? Like that practice of tapping in with yourself to to check?
For me, that's like when I write poetry. If I'm writing something that's really negative, I'll sit down with it and go like, okay, what's the negative side of this? Like, what's actually digging into me right now? So if I've had a stressful day, what's stressing me out about it? Why am I stressed out about it? Just asking myself a series of questions. That's what I do when I meditate. I tend to sit there and I just, instead of like trying to clear my head, I try to focus myself after I clear my head and go like, okay, what bugged me about today? There's this. Why does all that matter to me?
Omonivie, what about you? What are your hacks for self-care for creatives?
No such thing as hacks.
Right.
Yeah, I resonate with both what Marianna said and what David said. I wrote on my little chalkboard that I have in my studio, a long time ago, actually, probably like sometime last year, self-discipline is self-care, is self-love. And not because I do the discipline part, because I know it's the healthy way to treat myself well. I know that structure is important, and I've worked in corporate America for a number of years, and then kind of switching from that to working for myself, it's been really difficult to give myself that structure. And so it took a long time for me to understand that was required, and it didn't make me less than, because I wasn't like, this self-control, freewheeling person or whatever, but just kind of understanding. So that also goes to what David was saying, is like really knowing yourself. So it popped into my head, like, I want to, die with a PhD in Omonivie Okhade. I want to have that degree, because that's really the most important part of self-care, is like knowing the self. So like, I meditate. I am a part of a meditation group. I help lead meditation for people of color, or BIPOC, Black, Indigenous people of color. And in those years of kind of like really working and studying and practicing meditation and incorporating like concepts like self-compassion, like it's only within the last few years, or actually I want to say maybe the last year, that I really was able to put into practice what self-compassion was, instead of like thinking about it on a theoretical basis. So having it kind of come up spontaneously within me, like when I'm having like a hard time or I'm stressing, and having a voice say like, well, what do you need in this moment? And understanding that that's self-compassion. And then, kind of in another moment, maybe feeling overwhelmed with all the stuff that I have to do, having that voice come up and say, what can you do in this moment? And that really comes with that practice of, self-compassion. Even if you don't quite get it, if you do it long enough, then the body will understand. And so, getting to know myself, having self-compassion is key to self-care. And for me, like, I've always loved books and reading since I was a kid. And I've been a self-help book junkie since like 2009. I don't know. It's been a mess. Like, I have like a mess of books. So right now I'm reading about healing developmental trauma. And so understanding how like trauma in your childhood really gets like trained in the body, like put in the body. And so that's another, point of, having to like really knowing yourself, and knowing like when your energy's high, when your energy's low, like what, opens you up and what closes you down, and when those things are happening, so that you can respond appropriately with compassion. So that's really kind of my, I guess, the hack is self-compassion.
Yeah, and I hear you so completely, like right in between what Marianna was saying and what David was saying, as far as like having that ritual and that schedule, but also having that like gentleness with yourself. One of the biggest tips for me that I give, especially for creative folks, and something that took me a long time to really figure out, was like, why was I not happy but other creatives were so happy? And it was because they had defined their own success. Like it's important that you define what success looks like for you. Because if you are a young rapper and you come out, you're 17, 18 years old, and the only success like the only thing that looks like success to you is a platinum record and a record deal and a few $1 million in the bank and all that, then until you get that, you're going to feel unsuccessful, right? Like, so this idea of, now I always use Paul Willis as an example. I think a lot of our viewers are familiar with Paul Willis. For years, I was trying to get Paul to write a press kit, get your stuff out to the media. We got to have media pushes when we do releases and all of these things. And Paul never really was into it because Paul just wanted to be the best hip hop educator that there was ever in the history of the world. But that was his goal, and that's what success looked like to him. So awards and titles and articles and any of that didn't matter to him. So what does, like, how have you defined success in your field, and especially like versus, you know, kind of what the status quo of what success might look like for creatives? I think it'll help folks kind of get that idea of, like, you know, just how to define your own success. So what does success look like for you?
So success for me at this point, I'm 41 years old. So success for me definitely changed. I was that rapper with that baddest chick in the game. And I was like, I don't want to do what the baddest chicks in the game do. So that's not going to work for me. And I had to change it and realize that, number one, my autonomy is the most important thing for me to feel successful, and my safety at whatever capacity that I could exercise that at. And so, you know, I learned at a young age that, you know, I'm definitely a warrior spirited person. And what I identified by success was like how many battles I could take on for everybody else, every cause, every advocacy possible event I could do. You know, I was all up at it, you know, speaking, spitting, blaring, you know, being all loud. And then I realized, like, as I got a little bit more mature, that I started leaning more into like the nurturing side of myself, the balance. A lot of that was, you know, more the masculine base of warrior, but I started tapping into more like that divine feminine warriorism and how that shows up. And so that started to resonate more in like being a warrior for the freedom of the choice to determine what I want to do. And so success for me at this point in my life is having the ability to be a full-time entrepreneur, to be able to have a quality of life that I'm comfortable with, that's constantly growing in prosperity, not being owned by any particular company that, you know, scales my productivity, how I want to situate my day as far as my time or my timeline for my projects. That autonomy allows me to create the boundaries for my personal and professional success without being questioned or challenged on it. And I did. I honestly, you guys, a couple of years ago, I tried to have a job. I tried to be like a normal 9-to-5 person. And it just, I like cried every day going home and, you know, traffic, what is this? I work from home. Like it was, I cried every day to my best friends on the phone. And I was like, okay, clearly success for me is to be able to determine what I want to do, how I want to do it, create my money how I want to do it, and have 100% faith in myself that I can do that. And now that I've been obedient to that, you know, walk, I feel very successful, and it's no longer determined if I have a #1 hit on a chart or if I'm the baddest chick in the game. I feel like I'm one of the dopest, you know, chicks in my community. Nobody has to tell me that. I feel that because I innately do the work that I want to do, and I don't have to answer to anyone else. No one has the right to take that around and work it for me. And then in terms of the second half, safe, like feeling safe as much as possible. I know that there's things that we can't control. I'm a retired control freak, so being with that, that's the only job that I have retired from. And as a retired control freak, I can't control everything around me, but I can be prepared as best as possible for changing things in my environment, in my city, you know, socially, physically, mentally, emotionally. And that's where the responsibility for my mental and emotional health care comes in. So I can respond in kind with the autonomy necessary to stay as free and as peaceful as possible. So my autonomy and my safety, having those in my life, I feel very secure. I remember in my 20s and 30s, I was like, I'm grown, but I don't feel grown. Like this kind of success makes me feel like a grown ass woman. And that makes me happy and makes me feel successful.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. Yeah, like the autonomy is so important. I feel that 100,000%. Like for me, being a spoken word poet, there's not a lot of preordained success paths. There's no like for hip hop, getting on MTV might have been a thing at one point, or this magazine or that. They don't really have that for spoken word. There's like button poetry, and that's the big one to get on, or there's the National Poetry Slam. That's the big thing to get on, which doesn't exist anymore. So for me as an artist, it's really, how am I affecting the world around me as one benchmark of like, am I helping people grow? Am I doing what I can in that regard? Am I able to, that autonomy that you were talking about, make sure that I'm taking care of my own needs, make sure that I'm taking care of myself week in and week out as best as I possibly can. And the third one, if I had to put it down, would say that it's at the end of the week, if I sit down and I meditate with myself and I'm truly unhappy, and I've been doing all this amazing stuff, I've been doing, this and that, what's driving me to be unhappy? Like, if I feel like crap at the end of the week, then I'm running myself down. And if I'm running myself down, then I must be doing something wrong. Something needs to change. It doesn't matter if I'm doing spoken word or not. It doesn't matter what job I'm doing. It's just being able to live a life where I can look at myself at the end of the week and say, I'm satisfied with what I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. I'm loving all this. I feel like I'm getting like free advice. And I'm supposed to be the one giving
Same.
it.
That's why I do this show, actually, is for the free advice.
Awesome. Yeah. So I'm going to be 40 and like, I have to be able to say that without like, having a reaction.
40's the new 20. Like, don't worry about it. That's what it is, right?
Right. She's like, come on in, sis. The water's fine. But yeah, like I want to say, maybe it was like 7 or 8 years ago. I was meeting with like a career coach or a therapist or something, and she asked me to visualize like what an ideal day would be. And I was like, well, okay, I would wake up in my loft next to my love, and we'd have some love and morning time, and then I'd go and paint something, and then I'd go to a dance class, and then I'd meet my friends for brunch, and then maybe I'd go into work at 2 because I'd have a company and I could just like it would be running without me, and I would just go in at 2 o'clock and maybe have a couple meetings and check in with folks and maybe work like 3 hours at the most, and then go home and then go to a gig at a jazz club where I'd be singing for the night, and then do it all over again the next day, basically. And, and I thought I'd be able to get there at 40. But like, I had that thought the other day, and then I like kind of looked at my day-to-day life, and some of those elements are there, some aren't. I live in a kind of a loftish style apartment. I get to wake up, I get to have my morning ritual. I get to, have my brunch with my girls or whatever. I get to like take my day as it goes, and then like really get to work when my energy is ready to go, and then work as long as I want. And then, then I can engage in other types of art. Like over the years, I've done dance, I've done singing, I've done all these different things. And that is like who I am as a person, and being able to, and that's my success, is being able to express all these creative parts of myself after many years of not being able to, and having people appreciate that and like tell me with my jewelry, Tula and Bloom in particular, I feel very successful when somebody messages me after receiving their piece and talk about well, not to get anecdotal because I'll like totally start crying, but like basically being told that like the piece that they received from me helped them to remember their strength, remember, that they're not alone in the situation, especially like with the pandemic or whatever. So being able to get like direct feedback from people is something that I know that, it's what fuels me. So being in a job, in a career where I can like get that direct feedback, and then being able to direct my life in a way that is optimal for me. And again, it goes back to like knowing yourself and knowing what makes you thrive, and whether that is fueled by having compensation, or if it's fueled by freedom and being able to do what you want with your day. Like I might not have like $1 million in a bank, but I can look like I do because I love thrift stores. So, and that's another part of self-care. So I'm like, if I can go thrift store shopping, I am successful. I'm good. I'm good. So, yeah, it again, like, you know, as you said, Andrew, is like really being clear on defining what it is for you. And then for me, coming from a culture, my dad was Nigerian, and that culture is very much focused on success being these concrete ideas of, you know, being a professional, doing well financially, having a family, and having something to pass that on to. And I'm like, okay, I might not be checking any of those boxes right now, but I have to, like, the success for me is learning that that is not the only way, you know, that may be a way that works for some people, but if it doesn't work for me, that's okay. And like knowing what works for me and being able to embody that, that is my success.
Dope. Yeah, and I think too, you know, all of us are professional working artists, and I think it's important for any creatives who are just kind of starting out and tuning in. Something I learned. So I used to. One of my best friends is an incredible visual artist, incredible graffiti artist, and as we were coming up, you know, I'm trying to be the rapper, and I'm trying to get him to be the artist, and I keep pushing. You need a website. We need to get you out there. I can get you these gigs. I can link you with this. And he was never really into it, and it was so frustrating for me. And I finally like, fine, I'm not going to help you get to where you want to be. And then I got to a point in my career where I was dealing with the label for this record, and there was this pressure, and it was just like I grew to hate the music. Like it got to a point for me where this art that I loved so much like was driving me crazy because it'd been so business and so commodified. Right. So there is nothing wrong. If you are a creative and you're like, yo, I create this thing because it makes me happy. Sometimes it's like a better option to just keep creating the thing that makes you happy and not try and make money off of the thing that makes you happy. Cause that's a whole other realm to kind of navigate.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel that heavily. Like to put this in a job perspective, like I used to work for Apple, and it was the least happy I ever was, even though I was one of the top like 300 tech advisors there. And I was so unhappy. You know what my happiest job ever was? I worked as a baseball supply shipper. I was the guy in the back who would take your baseball bats, your gloves, pack them up, ship them off. Happiest job I ever had because there wasn't that expectation there. And that expectation is really what can be so harmful to you, especially if it's something that's so out there that it's really tough to meet. If you set your understanding that like you can have high goals, but having that expectation, that weight on you every day can really bear into you. So I love what you said about being able to oh geez, what you just said it. You were talking about doing it as not a hobby, but just something that you love to do.
Well, and I think
that's so valid.
I think about even so when we get into other art forms, right? So like over the pandemic, I started woodworking, like I started whittling and shit. I'm not good at it at all. Like I will not be selling you anything that I made anytime soon. Yeah. But I love that shit. Like I love to sit in my backyard in the sunshine and make something. My grandfather did woodworking, so it feels like a connection to my lineage, right? Like, so just this idea that, you know, while you're creating, the making money off of your creation should not be the end goal. You know what I mean? Like the even folks who you're looking at, who a lot of us pay our bills with our creative endeavors, that's not the end goal and that's not the biggest goal. It happened on the way. It's really nice when it happens, but the bigger goal is like, you know, joy and cultivating joy. I want to make sure that we talk, especially now. So I was talking to the Artists of Sacramento folks last night a little bit, just on creatives coming back after this pandemic, right? So for myself, like I have the special edition immune system. I've been in the house for a year straight. I'm just getting to the point, like I'm having to retrain myself when I see y'all out and about and I see folks doing things and doing creative things. I'm having to train myself not to be like, man, y'all need to go inside and wear a mask. And what are you guys doing? Because it's not that, right? Like things are changing, things are shifting.
But he was one of the most vocal people on gangbanging and staying in the house for sure.
And so just this idea of as we come out, like how we practice our own self-care. And for me, I've talked to most of y'all about boundary setting as part of self-care and such an important part of self-care. A lot of times we talk about the glamorous parts of self-care, but boundary setting is such a huge part of it. And so just this idea of like, I'm interested in kind of what you all are doing to kind of come back to it, but also just this idea of boundary setting and how important that can be. For me, it means saying no to a bunch of events that people are doing and not feeling like when I do see some open mics popping up, I do see some of the homies doing some things. I do see some poetry coming back, and I'm the laureate, and I feel this pressure to be out there and to be doing these things. But also, like, I got the special edition immune system, and I got to watch out for myself and take care of myself. So balancing these two things in coming out of the pandemic. Any insights for artists, for creatives? How are you handling that personally? Anybody?
Yeah, so for setting boundaries for me, that's never really been a big problem. That's kind of like built into my personality very well. And I don't feel guilt or shame about it, but I will give key phrases that I give to a lot of clients that I'm working with who are experiencing mental health or emotional hygiene issues, and learning how to create boundaries, especially for those who've experienced any form of abuse. Sometimes when you're accustomed to abuse, and you're creative, part of what you're doing is overcompensating by giving more than what you can really have in your bandwidth to give. And then you're struggling after to scrape, whether it's food, clothing, shelter, money, whatever it is for yourself. And so, especially for creatives who have dealt with trauma or abuse and not knowing how to establish boundaries, one of the two powerful phrases that I share with clients is, number one, that's not going to work for me. And sometimes if you have abandonment issues or things like that, you don't want to say no to people because then somehow, even though that serves you well and serves your good, you feel like abandoning being requested for something that's important. So it's not a no, but it's not going to work for me. And that's a clear statement. That's not going to work for me. It doesn't turn you into a bad guy. It doesn't mean you don't care. And then the second thing after saying that's not going to work for me is, this is what I can and cannot negotiate. Because we get what we negotiate, whether it's a silent contract and we just don't say nothing, we let people run over us until it gets so bad that we can't take it anymore. Or unless we're verbally, able to articulate it and then uphold it when people push those boundaries. So the first step is, that's not what's going to work for me. So you're clear, so no one tries to test you. But then you state clearly what is negotiable and what is a non-negotiable. And everything in relationships and love and life and work, everything is a contract. And so a lot of the times as artists, one of the number one problems artists have is negotiating their contracts and their money, which ultimately money is just a representation of currency. So I'm kind of a little different on that philosophy that was just shared about, like, money shouldn't be the end goal. Money is part of the process. If it was gold shillings, if it was cowrie shells, I want my coins. Run me my coins, because that's how I pay for my healthy fruits and vegetables, and it maintains me, right? So seeing what is and isn't non-negotiable is actually how you not just have the fence boards laying on the ground, but you actually hammer them in the ground. You state what the entry ways are and where people can come and exit and exchange. But you also state clearly that we don't even talk about that because it's non-negotiable, because that will not work for me. And so it kind of seems like a little hard up for people initially. But what I found is when I put up those non-negotiables and then tell what will and work with me and negotiate what works, people tend to respect me, and my worth and value on the exterior goes up, and my worth and value for myself on the interior goes up. So it's an inside job. I have to establish what those boundaries are. I have to place them up, even though it might have felt awkward in the beginning. I have no problem doing it now. But what happens is people are a lot less apt to even ask for more than what I want to give or what they deserve when they see the fence there and understand that you only gain interest when there's a fair exchange and reciprocity in one way or another. And so that kind of prevents me from dealing with a lot of heartache. Because when I was a young artist, I just was so happy to perform, and then I'd be home hungry at night, or trying to figure out who was going to buy me a drink or buy me something. I was like, no, that's not going to work for me. So that's not what's going to work for me. Set clear what you are and are not willing to negotiate is a really great way to, exercise the tools that have worked for me. So I'm not going to get punked or used and abused silently or fight about it either.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that pretty much said all of it, but I mean, to put it a different way, I guess I used to be a host on the #1 sex positivity talk show on iTunes, and Brown Chicken, Brown Cow, shout out to them. And the thing that we talked about a lot, Brown Chicken, Brown Cow. And, the #1 thing that we talked about was consent, and the idea of consent isn't just saying yes. Consent is fuck yes, or else it's a no. And if you're sitting there and you're like, you know what, they're offering me this gig, it's $500, or I think it's worth $500, but they're paying me like $50, if that, maybe some food. And you're like, yeah, I guess I could say yes to that. Like, that's not consent. You're not saying fuck yes to it. What can you change about that to make it a fuck yes? Like, is there anything that can change to make it a fuck yes? Are there any, I should probably not swear as much, but
keep it going. This is important.
But like, what would make it a hell yeah for you? What would make you happy at the end of that show? More than anything. So, it's really being able to like know your worth and be able to ask for it. In terms of pandemic stuff, you shouldn't feel bad about anything, period. If you feel any kind of pressure, that's totally internal. That's some stuff that you need to deal with within you, and understand that, like, if there are open mics going on and you're like, man, I just really miss like being around people. People are going to judge me. If anyone's judging you, keep that in mind for after the pandemic. Because those people, if they are more worried about having you in attendance than you being worried about your health, that's an issue. That's a red flag.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love that Marianna has like built-in boundaries. I was not raised with boundaries. So when I would come across people who had them, I'd be like, I'd be taken aback, because I'm like thinking, okay, well, this doesn't seem right. This doesn't seem like, how can they state what they want and don't want? Like, how dare they, because I wasn't given that the opportunity to say, this is what I want, or this is what I don't want, or even if I did, have it be heard or respected. So it's taken me a long time to kind of learn what learn what boundaries are, B, learn what they were for me. And so for me, it was like, now I think about like what makes me feel funny. Like if something's being asked of me and there's a kind of like, it's kind of goes to what you said, David, about like that hell yes, kind of feeling. And I know that when I say yes to something where I'm kind of like, it generally doesn't get done, because I don't have the, passion behind it, the impetus behind it, and it just makes you feel guilty. And so I'm still kind of going through those lessons. And so building up boundaries is something that I continue to work on. When I am able to recognize like where a boundary's been crossed or where I'm coming up against it and be able to respond in the moment, that is something that I treasure, because it's like this, like I'm learning how to build those boundaries and learning how to identify those boundaries that I have. So really kind of paying attention to when that, like, where is it in the body? Like, is there a burning in your chest? Is there like a knot in your stomach or in your throat? And recognize that is something to pay attention to, and maybe a boundary is being crossed and you have to kind of address it and even like write it out and then put it on your wall and like, this is a boundary. Okay. So whenever this kind of feeling comes up again, know that that's what's being hit and you have to respond to it. So for me, like, yeah, I've said no to things. I've said no to friends when there was things that felt funny to me, pandemic wise, and made me question whether this was something that was like necessary or just, not, and most things were not necessary in this time. So yeah, it's been kind of a weird process to navigate. And I think we kind of have to have compassion, because if it's weird for us, then it's weird for the people who are like crossing our boundaries too. And maybe they're not aware of it. So yeah, just kind of like, yeah, it's rough in these streets. That's all I gotta say. It's just rough, What were you gonna say, Marianna?
Yeah, I wanted to add something to that. Just for folks that are struggling to put up boundaries, I think one thing that really helps me is, we say like, keep it 100 all the time, keep it real, right? Which is ultimately like slang for I'm going to be authentic. I'm going to be true to myself. And so I think if folks are ever struggling on how or when to set boundaries, what I say is that's directly hinged into me being authentic. Like, you don't want me half-assed, and I don't want me half-assed. And I don't want to pretend that I can serve you at 100% when I'm half-assed. Like, you need both these two smiling, right? Like, you need me at 100%. So one thing, like, I've had, folks that'll call me and need maybe having a mental health crisis or whatever. And they're like, I need you right now. And my first response is like, are you safe? Are you in an unsafe situation? And immediately that's immediate checker. Like, okay, no, I'm not going to die right now. Like, I can make it. So no, it's not an emergency. What you want is me in your urgency. And I'm not in your hurry. I'm here to service and provide with what I can. And ideally, I want to be there at 100%. So we can set your refresh session for tomorrow at noon when I have this available hour. Will that work for you? If not, I'm not going to go into guilt or shame, because my goal is to be at 100% for you. And if I don't do that, I'm not being 100. I'm not keeping it real. I'm not being authentic. And we're more than likely both not going to have the outcome, because I signed a silent contract to be in your hurry, in your worry, to get what you need in the moment. And then the outcome is not going to be fair. And so that comes from gigs, that comes to quality time, everything. And it seems really strategic, but the bottom line is when I do show up at 100% and you get exactly what you need, it was well worth the wait. So, for example, I just got booked for a 3-part series gig. And the request, when I got the proposal request, is, will you do online facilitation for the first gig? And then will you do in person? Like, now they're starting to like, come do these work in person now. We need to see you. We need to feel you. And yes, you're engaging online, but we want you. And we're all vaccinated. And I'm not a vaccinator. I haven't made that choice yet, right? So with that being said, I get what I negotiate. I am willing to agree to doing the first online, and I'm open to do the second in person. But the door that I create is the clause of adding in, if there's any personal or public reasons why I need to preserve myself and continue to do them online, I have to negotiate that. Otherwise, I'll do that first gig online, and then they're like, me, come here. And I might find out that somebody's attendant has been exposed. Then I'm, I got to do what you need, because I said, I need to renegotiate the contract, or I could just make sure to add that clause in there so I'm keeping it 100 all the way around. And so it's those small, subtle decisions that we make along the line, as opposed to making one major decision that we're too afraid to deal with if for some reason the situation changes and it doesn't serve anyone their higher good. And I just say those things up front with people, like, this might sting a little, but this is how I operate. Work with that. If not, it's okay. If I'm not the servant for you, it is okay. You can go find somebody that you can run over and punk. And it's like mothers with breast milk. You ever see them babies? The mama tired. She tired. She ain't got no milk left, but they'll sit in your lap, rip your shirt up, and get busy. It's like, this is still my body. Even though this is nurture exchange, I gotta be at 100%. Sometimes you gotta wean them motherfuckers from the tit, y'all. Wean them from the tit. Make sure you're nourished, so so that the milk you have to give isn't full of wine because you self-medicating, because you're upset, because you're being used and abused. Excuse me getting a little extra right there, but I feel like somebody out there needed it just like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, to add on to those couple of phrases, I'm gonna give creatives, especially the ones who are just starting out, I'm gonna give you another phrase. It's called, "What's the budget for this event?" Because a lot of times, and it's wild now, because I mean, I'm very public about artists getting paid. And it's wild to me how many times I still get hit where folks don't mention in the initial reach out that there is a budget. Like, I don't even need you to be like, here's what I want to pay you, but I need you to tell me there's a budget or not. You know what I mean? Am I doing this? Do you want me to do this on the love, or is there a budget? And I think a lot of times it took me forever to get comfortable just hitting people back first off and immediately like, yo, what's the budget for this event? And generally, like, there's usually an answer for it. But just like for a lot of us, like if my neighbor comes over and is like, yo, your yard is your grass needs to be mowed, fam. Can I mow your yard? Yeah, I'll definitely let you mow my yard. But if he comes over and is like, yo, what's up? Can I get $20 for mowing that yard? Then I'll give him $20 for mowing my yard. You know what I'm saying? Like, so you have to ask for it. And just getting in the habit as artists and as young artists, even if you're just coming up, making sure you're asking for it and checking in with that. I also just had this thought, and I want to ask y'all, like, where this line is for you. You know, I was talking yesterday about, so I host a lot of things. And when ZFG was just starting and we were trying to get out there. We wanted to be seen. We wanted to have a presence, and we wanted to get connected. So I used to say yes to everything. Like, I hosted dance parties that was music that I could not stand myself. And I wouldn't do that now. You know, like, I'm in a place where if someone was like, yo, can you host this rave party? I'd be like, probably not, bro. So, where is that line for you that is like, you know, there is sacrifice that it takes in this creative world, right? Like, to get ahead and to get to where you want to get to. Because if I, as a young artist, would have been like, I'm only doing things that bring me joy, and like, there's a lot of ladder climbing, like, rungs that I would have missed, you know, because just like anything, it's sacrifice and hard work to progress in some of this. So where is that line for y'all? That's like, you know, when do you kind of get to stop sacrificing some of that stuff? Is it ever like okay to be sacrificing some of those things? Like, do you think it's ever cool to be like, okay, I'll host this even though I hate it? Like, what are y'all's feelings on that?
I mean, shoot. So here's the thing, like, you have to think about the fact that the currency that you're getting isn't just money, right? There are things that I've learned just from saying yes to the gig in terms of show production, in terms of how to put on a show, how to, you know, work sound, work lighting, like, what else am I being educated on, kind of like an internship, right? So if I'm learning something from you and you're not paying me as much as I think I should be, I'm still getting my worth out of it because I can use that information later. Exposure is bullshit. I think we all know that. So if someone's trying to sell you exposure, it's all about the respect. Like, the most I've ever been respected in shows are the shows that have paid me the most. The most I've ever been disrespected in shows are the shows that just want me to do it for the exposure. The ones that ask me to do it for free. And in the end, like, if you know what you're worth, if you know the fact that there is a level of monetary need that you need and you're willing to ask for it, that's important. But also, like I said before, that education, if you're learning something from it, like, I love doing gigs where I get to learn something new, and that will automatically in my head decrease that price a little bit. But that's just me.
Yeah. I think part of it is, you know, when we talk about know what your line is like, sometimes you need to make those mistakes. You need to, especially if you're starting out, you need to not worry so much about, you know, not making mistakes or not or saying yes to the wrong thing. Like sometimes it's the saying yes to the wrong thing and doing it and figuring out, no, this is not what I like. This is not me. Like, you know, Andrew, you didn't know you didn't want to do raves until you did it. Right?
Right.
You were like, you weren't sure. And then, you know, over time you're like, this is the boundary. This is the thing that I don't want to do in the future. And for me, I think one of it was like, I got tired of doing like outside pop-ups, you know, especially like in the hot ass summer. And I'm selling metal jewelry. People are like burning themselves trying things on. I remember one time it was like I had signed up to do a second Saturday pop-up, and I think it was going to be like 103 that day. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to do this. What I'm going to do instead is take appointments for people to come to my studio. And if they want to shop, they can do it there. And did I, you know, possibly miss out on, you know, some sales? Maybe, maybe not, because, you know, on the alternative, I could have gone out there and burned my ass off and only made like 2 sales because everybody was smart enough to stay at home. So, but I think, you know, I probably had that knowledge because I did that before. I did that when there was a, you know, a 99-degree day. I went out when I should have stayed home and like had that experience of like, this ain't worth it. So it's kind of a balance. Like you learn from those mistakes, and then you know like what your line is. And so for me, like, yeah, I'm not going to do a whole lot of outside shows anymore. I did want to say something on the last point about going back to boundaries. There's also the idea of like setting expectations for people, so that they know like going forward, this is how the dynamic will go, what you will accept or not accept. I had somebody place an order, and I think I've put it on like I put it on my website about how things are made to order, how things, you know, take time to make because I'm making them by hand. Somebody didn't read that, and they were like, "Where's my order?" And I was like, "Oh, okay. So this is how this is going to go. When I have relationships with my clients, this is the level of respect that I give them, and this is the level of respect that they give me. If this is not something you could do, I can refund your money." So that is like a willingness to thank you a willingness to know what the value is in that relationship. Is it the money or is it your level of respect? So again, that's all about kind of that knowledge, that self-knowledge. Yeah.
I
What
have
you think, Mariana?
no problem saying no. It tastes good coming off my tongue. Hell, and the thing is, you know, people will push you, try you, you know. Even with this whole race, equity, inclusion, they want you to just be happy to be included, to sit at the table. Them ideas is worse. And if you will charge somebody else a consulting fee or creative fee or, you know, procuring fee for all this that you've been doing forever, why should I just be so happy to be at the table? Now, I do agree with brother when he said there's things that I'm going to gain that are more than just the financials, but there's still a very clear standard of what I won't go below. And yeah, it did take time to get there, but I don't go backwards. So I had a mentor that sat down with me. I started doing workshops for free. People attended plenty of workshops for free. But there's a point in time I was like, okay, I feel like I'm an expert now. Like I feel worth it. I feel valuable. And so I remember when I started off in workshops, started at like 500 a pop. And I'm going to be real with numbers, because sometimes even for new up and coming artists, a lot of the times like people keep finances really private, even saying things like, well, what's the budget? That's an ask. When you go to Macy's or you go to the thrift store, it doesn't ask how much money you have. This is how much I cost. Either you've got it now and you're going to save so you can earn me for your next event, or not. But what I won't do is go backwards. So I remember one time this mentor sat down with me and she's like, okay, you ready to make more than $500 a pop? What you trying to make? And there was like tug of war. It was tug of war for me to actually say how much I was worth. That session took like an hour. And finally, you know, jokingly, she was like, Mama, put the extra zero down. And so every 6 months, I give myself a $500 raise for any presentation, keynote, whatever I do. And I don't blink about it. And let me tell you, there's a rites of passage moment that you have to put yourself through for yourself, not only mentally, emotionally, spiritually. We honor all that. It's also, as an entrepreneur, as an artist, you have to put yourself through a rites of passage financially. Now, if you're still making the same amount you did 2 years ago, that means there was no inflation. That means there's no price rises on the housing we have. And a lot of times people are wondering why they're struggling. You raise your expertise, you raise your experience, you raise your product, so you raise your prices. And when you do that, you don't blink. Now, to answer the question, will I do something I don't like? Absolutely not. I'm not going to do no rave thing. Sorry, that's not my bandwidth. I don't do that. But when we talk about charity, let me say this for those of you young artists who perform, and I hope you're sending invoices and doing contracts, because that word of mouth crap is bullshit. So when you're moving forward and you decide, okay, for me, now for the average hour presentation, and that's just a keynote, not a facilitation, not a workshop, not a training, but just a basic 1 hour keynote, that's $1,500 an hour, period. Now, if it's a nonprofit that comes to me and they say, okay, you don't have $1,500. First of all, they were transparent and they kept it real. They didn't do that tug of war and made me feel like I was charging too much. They are being honest about what is in their bandwidth to give to me. Then, if it's an organization that I have the time, the energy, the capacity to do it, and I decide I will do a community care discount, I will put the full price on the invoice, and at the bottom, I make sure to write down, this was your discount. So you know my value. You always know my value. If I'm giving a charity or community care, you also know that. And artists, eventually you are a business. When you do your taxes, you can show that this was your write-off for community donation and charity. And so I have no problem talking about the numbers I make, because that's a lot of the time why I struggled trying to figure out what I was worth, because people weren't telling me, hey, I do this for this much, that for that. I didn't know what to pattern after. So now when somebody asks me to do a facilitation or a training for a company that I know is making millions of dollars, I don't blink when I start putting multiple zeros up. And no one's going to make me think twice or feel guilty or shameful about that. So I really wanted to be super 100 and transparent about some numbers for one fee that I charge for a particular thing, because somebody out there is like sitting down trying to figure out, what does it mean to know my worth? Yes, it starts with a particular number. When you're talking about finances, don't be shy about it. And last thing, because I know I'm getting long-winded and I need to share the floor, but I think this is important. I remember that the next day after I went from this was years and years ago, when I went from 500 to 1,000 per hour workshop. And I was so nervous. And the next day, somebody requested my services. And I was like, oh, I can't go back. And I was doing that. Am I worth it? Are they going to charge it? Am I not going to get anything at all? Am I going to push them away? Do you know that they returned that invoice with the, okay, we'll send you to our budgeting department without a blink of an eye? And that's when we talk about manifestation. We be talking about boo things and potential gigs, but you also have to manifest the numbers and not blink, because that means there's somebody out there that has exactly what I'm worth and what I determined on my own, not waiting for them to tell me what's in their budget and then trying to negotiate. That's just stressful. I don't have time for that. So I hope everybody who is now, you're now at that next level where it's starting to make something, when you put that number down, don't blink. Know and surround yourself by people that honor that value and give you that money gleefully and some more.
Yeah, you hit so many points just right on the head. You know, like, and I think even, you know, one thing that I tell the young artists, right? Like we work with these 16, 17-year-old artists who they want to be performance poets or rappers or whatever. And, you know, my thing has always been like, do what you do for free until someone pays you for it, and then that's your rate. And every time that rate goes up, when you get that first $500 gig, that's the rate. And I think that idea that you were saying, don't look backwards, is so important. And then also, you know, just a tip for me, for folks who want to do what Marianna's talking about, where you give yourself that raise, but you're like, man, I don't feel like, maybe you don't feel like you deserve that $500 raise this year. But that's a lot of the time because we see ourselves in the mirror every day, right? So you don't see the change. Something I definitely recommend for creatives every year, at least once a year, is to update your bio. Because you will see what you've done, what you've grown to, that helps you see your worth. Anytime that I write down everything that I got done that year, and I'm like, oh, oh, I definitely deserve that paycheck. You know what I mean? Like, so I think that's like part of it. So we just hit the hour mark, but I do want to ask this one question, just a general a ritual for your creative practice specifically, right? Like that piece of advice for a young creative that's kind of just starting out, that's specifically for your creative practice. So for me, one of the mantras that I hold really tight is alignment over grinding, right? So this idea that if I have a creative project, if I need to write a poem, this happens to me all the time. I need to write a poem for an event. Someone asks for a specific poem. I can stare at my computer screen all day for an 8-hour day, bang my head against the screen. I can pace around and beat myself up for not writing the poem, or I can take the time to go out to the river, do some stretching, do some deep breathing, take a nap, eat a good meal, make some juice, whatever I got to do to get myself in my highest space, like my highest operating space, and then create something. So for me, it's definitely about, like, I've learned I can hustle, and I can be this effective, where if I take the time to really align myself and align my spirit and make sure I'm good, then it'll just flow out, and something that could have taken 10 hours of work of banging my head comes out in a matter of minutes, right? So for me, it's that alignment over hustle. As a creative, like, there is no, like, it's too much to get myself good. You know what I mean? Like, you can't, like, it's like Mariana was saying, like, you can't show up at 50% and do 100% work. So making sure that you are at 100% when you step into your creative realm, whether that's the studio, whether that's sitting down to write, whatever that practice is, making sure that you're at 100% and able to do your highest good. So what are, those, as we part ways for the young artists and the folks coming up, like, what are those practices that you use specifically in your creativity?
Nobody's going first.
No.
So glad somebody else to go first.
Yeah. I guess I can go. Here's my biggest thing has been that I've dealt with a lot of death over my life. You only live once. And do you really want to spend that time being miserable? So much like what you were saying with banging your head against the keyboard and all that stuff, if I'm here trying to write a poem and it's not coming out, I could make myself miserable for the next week, year, decade over it, or I can switch to something else, give myself time to reset, and if I come back to it, I come back to it. Also, if I can make a quick little shill real quick, because starting on Mondays, I'm doing grant writing workshops. I'm getting paid a substantial amount of money, like $15,000, to put on these free grant writing workshops for everyone by the city. So make sure you sign up, operationfreesoul.com.
For me, like giving myself that space to kind of allow inspiration or spirit to come through. Also working on the perfectionist tendencies I have, especially when I'm knee deep in a project and I keep screwing up, then I have to tell myself, done is better than perfect, take a break, whatever. I'm learning the value of sleep, and that I'm too old to do all-nighters, like way too old, because that shit hurts. Like, I literally hurt when I do an all-nighter.
Real.
So, yeah. So just making sure that I'm well-watered, well-fed, well-rested. That's kind of the key for me, and like knowing that, like, I'm not just my mind and the thoughts that I have. I'm also a body, and like taking care of the body will feed my mind and allow that to open. So, that's kind of the biggest thing.
And I would say, just reminding young people that as much as we want to be wild and free, discipline actually allows you to do that, right? Mm-hmm. Discipline, self-discipline is not punishment. And I think I would attribute a lot of the autonomy, the security, and a lot of the things that make me feel happy with myself as an edutainer is surrendering to the personal discipline that I know I need to keep even when I don't feel like it, because the end result always snaps me out of it. And so if you're feeling like you want to have your art go a little further, how much further are you willing to push yourself in a healthy, loving way to care for yourself on time, in divine time and alignment? Just see what it do, because discipline will have an outcome that will allow you that extra time because you took care of your business to do all the self-care. And I love every bit of my self-care. The pampering parts and the discipline part, they marry together very well. So I would just say that discipline isn't always punishment. Discipline can also help you access your freedom.
Ooh. Discipline will help you access your freedom. Come on. That's why I love you. I think that's about it. Do y'all wanna go around and just kind of shout out where people can find you, how they can follow you, if you got anything kind of going on like Dave got going on right now? Let us know about it real quick.
I can go.
Yeah.
So you can find me. So again, I design jewelry under Tula and Bloom, where you can find at tulandbloom.com. I'm on Instagram at Tula and Bloom. And my personal IG is open. So it's at Omonivie, Omonivie. I'm trying to get better about posting on there too, but that's more like blog stuff. Thank you guys for adding that. I literally just dropped off a batch of pieces to Crocker. I have pieces at the DeYoung. I have a couple at Shop at Purpose, which is a shop on J and 24th. And I'm doing a pop-up on the 18th at the Big Little Market, which is down the street on R Street. I think it's at, I'm going to forget the salon, but I'll post it on my Instagram when I get back to being active on that, since now I'm not under my workshop desk trying to get these orders out. So yeah. Oh, and everybody who had online orders, I'm working on them. I'm getting on them. You'll get them soon. Just be patient. Thank you.
Tell them or they get their money back.
Right? If you can't wait, I will give you back your coin. That's fine.
You can't rush that. Want to check out my edutainment and healing arts approaches to mental health, emotional hygiene. I'm at MissMarianna.today, because I'm Miss Marianna all day, every day. And you can check me out on IG at Miss Marianna 365 all day, every day. So yeah, if I'm not teaching on a larger scale with, community groups and social workers and things like that, I do also offer one-on-one sessions. I clock the dollar over there so I can give affordable prices to the community. You know what I mean? So if you feel like you're struggling with some mental and emotional health care, you can check out my workbook. It's called Own Your Shit. You can get that at my website, MissMarianna.today. And if you need a little push, you see it's kind of like that big mama non-traditional therapist vibe, to love on you, but to also call you out on it, to be accountable for what you need to do to keep yourself healthy and strong. You can book a refresh session as well on MissMarianna.today.
Putting contact information and phone right now.
And you can catch me everywhere on Operation Free Soul is all the socials, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, operationfreesoul.com. Again, workshops. They're free grant writing workshops I'm getting paid for through a grant. Isn't that a trip? So I want to teach people how to do what I do so that we can get more of the city money into our community money. Right. That's it.
Absolutely, y'all. Make sure you tune in to those. Dave's got a hook. And don't forget to love each other. Yo, real. Man, we just want to give a big shout out to the Artists of Sacramento for having us out here. I want to just give all my love to y'all for joining me on this panel. This was beautiful. I think anytime when I walk away with like my little notepad scribbled on, I'm like, okay, we did good. So yeah, just appreciations to everybody tuning in, and for Miss Marianna, for And Yes.
Thank you.
For Omonivie, Omonivie.
You were so good before.
Okay, I know. I just spooked myself. That's what it was.
You were
spooked
like,
myself.
we're almost done. I'm almost there. I just got to get it one more time. It's okay.
Omonivie.
Omonivie, yes.
Omonivie. Yes.
Yes, thank you for inviting me. Yeah, this is lovely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks.
For all of us, I'm Andru Defeye, and I love you, and you can't do shit about it.
See you soon.
Peace out.